Hello everyone, if you missed my brief review of Astrobot, go ahead and check that out, and if you did watch that, you know how much I enjoyed my time with that game. I loved it so much that it was instantly one of my favorites in the genre. I can't believe how incredible it is, and I hope that we keep getting more Astrobot games and it becomes sort of a mascot character for PlayStation moving forward, and that it sends the message, especially with the debacle with games like Concord, to Sony, that you have all these legacy IPs that are just sitting there, and sometimes a small, dedicated, passionate team given the go-ahead for these smaller to mid-budget games can create something wonderful and far surpassing these 6, 7, 8-year development cycle mega budget games. And I feel like we need more of these mid-level budget-wise, team size-wise games the way things used to be, and spread those out in between these gigantic mega blockbusters that a failure could immediately tank a company. Like, you need stuff like this. This is a huge success, and it made me want to think about what are my favorite platformers of all time. So here are my top 15 games in this genre. I'd love to hear what your favorites are below. I wanted to go ahead and do this because Astrobot, I loved it so much, it made me really kind of think about that. Something I didn't think about, doing this video before, but, made me think, man, is this one of my all-time favorite platformers? Is it my new favorite? Because it is just that good. I had that much fun with that experience. Starting with number 15, Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped on the PS1. That was a trilogy that was iconic to me in the 1990s with a PS1. Loved playing through those. But number 3 is my favorite. Number 14, Yoshi's Woolly World on the Wii U. I also played Yoshi's Crafted World on Switch and enjoyed that, but nowhere near to the level of Woolly World, which for me just felt so much more creative, and everything really did genuinely feel like it was made of yarn and fabrics, and it was a beautiful game. The textures were incredible, and I thought the mechanics involved with using that sense of creativity were just fun to play through. It was a very joyful experience. And that brings me to number 13, Astro's Playroom. Yep, that game that is just kind of included when you buy a PlayStation 5 beat out a lot of fantastic platformers. I ended up liking it more than some of my childhood favorite platformers. I thought it was so creative and fun and really showed all the different things that the PS5 and the controller can do in a way that didn't feel gimmicky. It could have very easily. Instead, it felt like it was an interesting exploration and used well in the level designs, and I love sort of the PlayStation legacy element of it. I just found it to be a joy to play. Number 12, we have Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart for the PS5. I played several of the Ratchet games over the years, starting with a couple on the PS2. To me, I always liked them. I never loved them. I also played the remake of the first game that's kind of tied into the movie, recently as well. And again, that was just kind of fun. Like, I've always liked them, but they've never been favorites of mine in the genre. But for some reason, Rift Apart was totally different. I enjoyed my time with that game so much more than any other game in that series. It instantly became one of my favorites. Number 11, Sonic Adventure 2 on the Dreamcast. The last Sonic game that I really have given more than an hour or two to over the years. There's been a few on the Wii, etc., that I've tried and played a little bit of and maybe enjoyed for maybe an hour or so, but none that really captured me enough to where I played through them all. I grew up with stuff like the Genesis and really liked those Sonic games, but my favorite games of all time for Sonic have been the two on the Dreamcast, Sonic Adventure 2, and then my number 10 is Sonic Adventure 1. I think Sonic Adventure 2 overall is a little bit better of a game, but there's something so iconic about Sonic Adventure. Like when the Dreamcast was coming out, just that opening, those first few levels and the area around, it's so nostalgic and fun and joyful, and that's one of my favorite Dreamcast games. So that creeps into my top 10 and is my favorite Sonic game ever. Number 9, Ape Escape. That's another fun franchise, and the first one for me, though, will always be my favorite because it just felt so unique the way you have to. One of the first games, I think the first game ever that I had that required the use of the new PS1 controller with the analog sticks. Yeah, I had both, just like one of those, I think, and then some of the regular ones. It's the first game I remember that required that back in the day, and it just felt so unique. And it was fun, and it added something totally different to the gameplay. And there's such an excitement in those seconds where you finally catch that monkey in your net. It was just something that was very different for the time, and there's never been anything aside from other Ape Escape games quite like it. And that's one that I think would be really cool to see a collection of Ape Escape or a remaster or something, because again, it still feels pretty unique to this day. Number 8, Super Mario Bros. On the NES. My first console was the original Nintendo, and one of the first games that I put in was the Mario Brothers Duck Hunt, and that will always have a special place in my heart because the memory of playing that and playing that with my siblings growing up. So that and Mario Brothers 3 for the NES are ones that are probably my most like iconic childhood platformers that we played a ton of as kids growing up, and they still hold up and they're still some of my favorites. Which is why I was very surprised my number 6 is Super Mario Odyssey for the Nintendo Switch. My favorite Mario game. Yeah, none of the other ones, Super Mario World, Galaxy, which I really enjoyed, Mario 64, always liked those, but none of them quite made my top 15. There's too many other ones I love so much more, and I was very surprised to find how much I enjoyed Mario Odyssey, that it finally beat after so many years the Super Mario Brothers and 3 from the NES I loved as a kid to become my new favorite Mario. I really enjoyed that, and I'm hoping they continue and expand upon the mechanic with Cappy and things like that. And I hope games like Astrobot kind of inspire or influence some of the design in the future with something more akin to Super Mario Odyssey, because when the Switch came out, and that was one of the first games that we got that and Splatoon 2 and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, that was such a blast to play through and replay. One of the few games that I have replayed from those early days of the Switch. Number 5, Jak and Daxter. Probably my favorite era of gaming is the tail end of the PS1 moving into the PS2. The PS1, N64, Saturn moving into the Dreamcast, and those first few years of the PS2. That's my favorite time in video games. I thought there's so much incredible innovation, and one of the best games to come out for that time period was Jak and Daxter. At the time, it had a very similar effect and feel as Mario 64 had. When that came to the N64, it felt like the first platformer that was really taking things into the next generation, really expanding into this fully 3D explorable world for that genre in particular. And Jak and Daxter seemed to do that for how do you take things to the next step then, with the PS2 coming out the next generation and then the original Xbox and the GameCube on the horizon at that time. And Jak and Daxter did that beautifully. It came out, and I still think it is one of the best platformers ever made. It's just a genuine classic. And I've always been disappointed with the direction they took after the first one. I like Jak 2 and 3, but they're very different with the influence they took from Ratchet and Clank. They just don't have that same feeling, and to me, while they've still held up to be fun games, they don't have that same iconic classic feel as Jak and Daxter. That game to me feels like it's become over time one of those icons of the genre, the way stuff like Mario 64 did, Super Mario World, and going back to Super Mario Brothers on the NES, just had that feel. My number 4 is Klonoa, and I go back and forth all the time with the original PS1 version or the remake on the Wii and now for Switch and PS4 I go back and forth which version I like more. I lean more towards the original version sometimes, but I find the remake a little bit easier to play when I go back. So I don't know, but either way, Klonoa is just, it's something that I always felt like should have been a huge mascot franchise. Something like Crash Bandicoot or Sonic or Mario really always felt like that was such a missed opportunity where we only got that and then one true sequel and a bunch of spin-offs and things on the Game Boy Advance, and there was like a Wonder Swan game and I think a volleyball game on PS1 in Japan, but it never quite became the big mascot franchise that I always felt like it should have, because it's so creative and unique, and there's something charming about that character and the sound design within this game and its sequel, which is my number 3, Klonoa 2, for the PlayStation 2. They have always been some of my absolute favorites in the genre, and I really hope that with the re-release of those in a collection that we get some of those spin-off games in a collection, or a Klonoa 3 could be an incredible modern platformer. And speaking of modern, my new number 2 is Astrobot for the PS5. Again, if you didn't watch it, check out my review. I talk about how much I just loved this game. I liked it that much. I really did, and I was not expecting to like it as much as I did. I was expecting it to be a little more reliant on the nostalgia factor, and it was just used so beautifully that it didn't use it as a crutch. It was just a part of the experience, and I thought it took creativity to a whole new level, to where it felt like the creative mechanics and level design of some of the best Marios that I've played, but for some reason it just clicked with me a bit more. It was just a personal taste thing where things are designed with different mindsets from different creative sources, and they will just kind of mesh better with some people than others. And for me, some reason the mechanics and the way things played and the way the levels are structured, it just, with the way I play these kind of games and the way I process things, and just for some reason it really fit well with everything that I wanted, and how it never felt awkward. It just felt very fluid, and just it clicked with me, really, is how I would describe it. Astrobot was such a fun game that, shockingly, it is all the way up to my number 2. It's that great. If you haven't played it, it genuinely is worth all the hype. It lives up to these crazy reviews people are giving it. It's that amazing, and I can't wait for more. And my number 1, which will probably be no one else's number 1, my wife makes fun of me all the time for how much I love this game. The game that Nintendo describes as an action puzzle platformer, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. I love that game. Between the Wii U and the Switch and the 3DS, I've played it through I think 6 or 7 times over the years. The Wii U overall is still my favorite version. I just like the way that it plays on the Wii U, even though there's extra content and things on the Switch version. It's kind of the more complete edition. The Wii U one, to me, just the way it feels with the gamepad and things, I like the way it works on the Wii U the best. And I don't know what it is about that game, the uniqueness of every stage being sort of this cube sitting out there in space, like it's just, and just maneuvering the stage to solve all of these puzzles, and interesting kind of Mario style platforming elements, but you have a character who can't jump, so you have to move through the environment in a fashion that feels very different than what you're used to. So it incorporates a lot of different puzzle game mechanics, but looks and feels more like a traditional platformer. So it kind of has this unique blend of different things. And what they were able to do with the unique stylings, and expand upon those few Toad levels that were in previous Mario game into its full own game, just worked perfectly for me. And I don't know if any game in this genre will ever surpass it, no matter how good it is, just because something about it connected with me when I first played that on the Wii U, and I never get tired of it now that I've obviously pretty much memorized every stage, all the different times that I've played it. But it's one of my favorite kind of casual pick up and play. I want to play something for 20-30 minutes, or take on a trip or something like that, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker is just a go-to game for me, and I think will continue to be. So I just have, I think, a unique love for that game. I'd love to hear if you like that game. I can't imagine anyone else picking it as their all-time favorite platformer, though. I can't believe anyone else would do that. But that'd be awesome if you were one of those people. That'd be incredible. So those are my all-time favorites in the genre. A couple ones that even kind of surprised me with Astrobot, like how high it made on my list, almost became a new favorite. And love to hear what your favorites are.